Y'all, in today's video I'm going to talk to you about maintaining the edge of your kitchen knives, so sharpening and honing, and what the difference is and why you'll do one probably more than the other. So to start out, what makes a good edge is, obviously it comes to a point, right? And at that point is this tiny little saw, right? And when we're using our knives, eventually that saw kind of gets either chipped away or worn away. Sometimes what needs done first, and this, I always tell people, before you sharpen your knives, you should try honing it first, okay? And in order to hone it, you're gonna need a honing rod. You can use a steel or a ceramic honing rod, or a coffee mug, or any other object, basically harder than the steel of your kitchen knife. I like the ceramic honing rods. And to hone your knife, first of all, I'll explain what that is. That saw edge, the little micro serrations at the edge of your knife get pushed over. And a honing rod, its job is to push those teeth back in line so that it cuts properly again. Now, both honing and sharpening remove a little bit of material. Honing removes less material because hopefully it's just aligning those things, but as things get used, they just kind of start to fall off. So your first course of action is to hone your knife, and to do that you want to rest it on your work surface, and I try and go for about a 13 to 15 degree angle, and you're just going to pull it towards you, and you're going to feel those teeth that are out of alignment. Alright? This should be your first step in sharpening your knife. Alright? Whenever your knife starts to get dull or it's not cutting properly, try that first. And that, most of the time, is going to bring your knife back to working like it's supposed to. But let's say, for example, that it doesn't, and things aren't cutting as easily as you'd like, or they aren't slicing as easily as you'd like. And that's when we get into sharpening. And to sharpen our knives, instead of those teeth getting pushed over, it's, our edge is kind of rounded over and it's time to sharpen it. And we need to remove material to get that nice triangular edge. And my preferred method for most people is to use sharpening stones. I like water stones. The brand I use is Nanohone, but you can use you can get sharpening stones on Amazon, you can get them anywhere, but I like these ones. These are good ones. For the general home cook, I actually usually recommend diamond stones because they don't need flattened. They're going to stay flat. These water stones will need flattened over time. Every couple of times that I sharpen knives on them, I will go ahead and re-flatten the stones with a different product. But to sharpen your knives, let's say it's really dull, it's not cutting well. You're going to want to start with something around a 400 grit stone. That would be my first go-to. That's going to be the most aggressive, and it's going to remove material the fastest. And you're going to want something to hold that stone on. You can use a towel, you can use one of these holders. That's what I like to use. It keeps things from sliding around. And then you need a little bit of water, all right? It's always good to have a towel handy too. You don't need a lot of water. Normally I do this at my sink though, but I can't film at my sink and get you guys to see what I'm doing. So what we'll do is we'll get the stone a little bit wet, and we're gonna find our angle, okay? Now, you don't wanna lay it flat because then you're gonna just scuff up the main bevel of your knife. You wanna come up. A good way to measure is maybe grab a matchbook, okay? Put a matchbook underneath your knife, and that'll give you about a 12 to 15-ish degree angle with which to sharpen the edge of your knife. And you want to maintain an even amount of pressure and come across the stone, right? And you want to use the full size of the stone. Otherwise, you're going to dish it out and wear it out faster. Maybe 5 or 6 strokes to start, even pressure on each side. And how you do it really doesn't matter. Some people will go a few strokes here and then move down as they work their way across the blade. I like to do the full stroke of the blade and then kind of touch up the tip and the heel. Usually need the most work. Alright? And as we go, we're gonna feel for a burr across the edge of our knife. And what the burr is you're creating that fine wire edge, and it gets pushed over to one side. And the side that you're gonna feel for that burr is the side of the blade that is up. When you're holding the knife, always hold the knife in your dominant hand, whether it's your right hand or your left hand. And you're gonna use that hand to bring the knife towards you on one side, and you're gonna use your other hand to maintain pressure and keep it from slipping around and maintain your angle. Come towards you, come back. Towards you, come back. I can feel that towards the tip of this knife, it's been used quite a bit. So I might hit that spot a little bit more before I go ahead and flip it over. And then a couple more full strokes. All right, I'm gonna wipe my blade off real quick, because sometimes you can't feel what's going on. And I can feel a nice burr forming all the way along the edge now. All right, so once you finish with the 400 grit stone, I recommend moving up to 1000 grit. And you're gonna repeat the same steps. But you're gonna hear that it's a glossier kind of sound. It's gonna be less coarse sounding when you're sharpening. Same angle as the last time. And the more you do this, the better you're going to get at it. It takes practice, like any other skill that you do. But it's rewarding, it's relaxing, and it's something that should be done pretty often. I like to, at this point, it's going to be harder to feel the burr. 1000 grit gets to be kind of difficult to feel. So I'm going to look at it in the light and make sure it looks even. You're going to be basically looking to make sure your polish is even. The 400 grit stone is really going to be where you're going to be removing the material and feeling for that burr. At this point, you're just polishing the edge. And then we're going to switch to our final stone, which I recommend using a 3000 grit stone in the kitchen. Why I recommend using a 3000 grit stone in the kitchen is because it's polished enough that it's going to go through anything nice and easy, but it's also toothy enough that it's going to grab on things that like have a skin to them, like a tomato or a pepper, and it's going to cut them a lot easier than with, in my opinion, I like the way it cuts a tomato or like a pepper with a 3000 grit edge, because it's fine enough to go through it easy, it's polished, but it's also got enough toothiness to it that it still grabs onto the skin of that and doesn't just try and glide on it. It gives you a more aggressive cut, in my opinion. So for our final stone, we're gonna get it wet, polishing that edge, and if you can listen now, you can hear that it's much smoother. All right, and then final step is to strop the blade. And I like to use, mine's beat up because I use it all the time. A lot of times my hands are dirty when I'm working. Is to use a leather strop. A leather strop, I like the suede side, but you can get one that's the shiny side of the leather too. But I prefer the suede side. I usually start at the tip on one side, come off, Same thing on the other side. I usually do 2 passes on each side. You don't want to cut into the leather because that's not going to work. You're just going to end up cutting up your leather. By then, you should have a nice polished edge of your blade, and it should cut properly. So at this point, our blade, it's been sharpened, it's been stropped, and it should cut paper without any hesitation. Takes a little bit of practice, but within, I don't know, 2 or 3 knives, you'll have the gist of it down. So one of the most common questions I get asked is honing, sharpening, how often should I be doing this? If you're cooking at home, it's not going to be as much as a chef that's doing this all day, every day, and using the knife all the time. But you should do it when your knife starts to feel like it's not cutting right. And like I said, your first step is to hone. If that doesn't work, then it's time to sharpen. And this should, you know, if you do this fairly regularly, it's not going to take that long. A lot of times you can start sharpening on 1,000 grit stone, and then finish on the 3,000 grit stone. And also experiment. You know, like sharpening is kind of a rabbit hole. You're not going to just do what I do and it's going to be amazing. You're going to have to take some time and figure some things out for yourself. And how much time you put into it, you might figure out that you like something different. I like the 3,000 grit cutting edge. You might like to take it farther up to like a 10,000 grit cutting edge. That might be great if you're making things like sushi or going through more protein types of things, like meats and stuff. But like I said, mileage is going to vary, and it's going to depend on your cutting style, how hard you're cutting on the cutting board. If you're cutting on a hard plastic cutting board versus cutting on like a nice wooden cutting board, that's going to change the life of your edge. But it's really going to be just one. When you feel like your knife could be doing better, could be performing better, is when you should start honing and then sharpening if it's not worth the hone. Please feel free to leave comments below. If you like content like this, I'm going to be working on a video next on how to care for your carbon steel knives. Carbon steel knives, patina. The handles on these custom-made knives are beautiful wood, and they require some care too. So if you want to learn about that stuff, stay tuned for the next video. And thanks for watching.